Thank you so much, Kara Scannell, for all of your reporting. We've got a powerhouse panel with us. We've got CNN correspondent Elizabeth Wagmeister. We've got the former Manhattan DA, of course, in the House with us, who has been with us throughout this as well. We've got Jeremy Saland, we've got Arthur Adalo, and we've got, of course, Misty Myers. Glad to have all of you here. I'm so happy that Misty Maris. I gave you a new last name. Misty Maris. I'm glad to talk to you, all of you. Thank you. This has been very significant. I mean, how often have all of us sat at this table together and wondered and parsed through every single detail, let alone the notes themselves, and wondered what this jury was thinking? Well, now we know from a hung jury, Jeremy, just 24 hours ago, to all of a sudden no longer hung, and now acquittal on the highest charge, Rico. What's your reaction?
Yeah, admittedly, I thought they were grappling with, whether or not the predicate acts were made out and whether or not they were going to go with that first count. But I thought that there was going to be potentially a conviction for sex trafficking for Cassie. Obviously, the problem with reading the jury is you can't read the jury. Right. You have no idea what they're going to do. But I think Mark Agnifilo was the Aaron Judge bat to the Southern District's ball. I mean, he really crushed it, and they didn't prove that case beyond a reasonable doubt, and they deserved what they got, meaning it's a reasonable result. I think if you look at this objectively and you look at the evidence, and you certainly hold them to that standard, they didn't make out even one of the fraud, coercion, or force allegations for sex trafficking.
Yeah. So wait, well, I want to hold on that point for a second, because that's so significant. Remember, the jurors went from 7 weeks of testimony hearing about all these different incidents for Cassie over an 11-year period, for Jane over several years. And at the end, they were told you only have to find one instance. You'll have many more to choose from, but only have to find one. They didn't find one in that. And Misty, I have to ask you, sex trafficking aside, there were questions from the get-go. Did the prosecutors bring the right charges here when it came to Rico?
I always thought Rico was a stretch, and I was waiting for that big moment where prosecutors explain to the jury and to those of us who are following the trial what exactly is this criminal enterprise. And that never really gelled. It was never something that was distinct from Combs as an individual. It had no purpose. It had the means and methods were never really explained. And it's pretty clear to me that that's where the jury found Rico to fall flat, because we know he was convicted on the 2 counts of the Mann Act, which would have satisfied the predicate crime. So clearly, they didn't see the conspiracy and enterprise component, so they didn't even have to get that far on Rico.
Along those lines, we can't forget the name Damian Williams. He was the U.S. attorney who brought this case. He was the U.S. attorney who wanted to make sure he made a name for himself when he was in that position, the way Pep Barara did, the way Rudy Giuliani did. It's been known to be a tremendous stepping stone for prosecutors. He's the one who gives the directives on what to charge and what not to charge, or at the very least approves it.
He's no longer there.
He's no longer there. He was President Biden's guy. Jay Clayton is now there, who's President Trump's guy, but he still had to go forward with it. But this Rico and the drama around it, and let's go for life in prison, and let me put the most famous rapper away forever. That, in my opinion, was a prosecutor's judgment being fogged and out of focus based on their own career aspirations, which is sad for the justice system. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I'm pleased with this jury's verdict.
Let me ask you, Elizabeth, because you've been following this meticulously and so well. Frankly, even since the CNN exclusively obtained that now infamous tape of the savage assault that was done to Cassie Ventura, that really then prompted the investigation at the federal level. We've heard a lot about the reaction of Combs and his family. You spoke to Cassie Ventura's attorney. Tell me, what is she thinking?
Yes, so I spoke to her attorney, Douglas Wigdor, and Cassie will not be speaking, at least right now, but he had just gotten off the phone with her when I sat down with him, and he said she's really doing okay. He said, do not worry about Cassie Ventura. She's a great support system. She's very strong, and I believe, do we have a clip?
We do have some time. I want to play it. Go ahead.
Yes.
I can tell you that some of the comments that were made in the closing argument I thought were repugnant, frankly. Calling those sorts of behaviors as a modern day relationship, saying that she enjoyed sex, saying she was a gangster, things like that. I don't think even with the jury verdict that they would have given that any credit.
Okay, so what her attorney, Doug Wigdor, is talking about is Mark Agnifalo's closing argument. We were sitting there. You remember that he called this a modern-day love story. He said that Cassie Ventura is the winner. The winner is the word that he used because he said she's sitting somewhere in this world with $30 million. And I asked Doug, I said, how did she feel hearing Combs' defense call her the winner? Yes, she has a large sum of money from that settlement, which, by the way, it was settled after, of course, Cassie filed her suit. He told me that Cassie had two options, which was take a large settlement, sign an NDA, or file her suit. She filed her suit, then she got the money. But he said, look, this is a woman that we saw with our own two eyes being beaten. To call her the winner, he found, as you said, he used the word repugnant. But to go back to what I was saying, he says she's really doing okay. She feels comforted. She feels full of gratitude because she does believe that other people have come forward because of her coming forward.
And yet she also, through her attorney, told the court how she felt about him possibly being released and talked about a threat she felt might pose to the safety of herself or witnesses in this matter. The judge denied bail in part on saying this was somebody who was violent, and by the defense's own admission, that old adage of be careful what you say and
they had no
everything we have
choice,
against
though,
you.
Laura. You can't run. His defense team couldn't run away from that
So
video.
is it fair for the judge, knowing that he wasn't convicted on those higher counts, to then take that into consideration? They can look at that as a judge, right?
100%.
So then
it's actually
game
the
out-
law. It's actually the law when you get convicted on this count, which is a violent count, that the presumption is the judge is supposed to detain him.
So then game out the sentence for me, potentially. I know we're all thinking about this, and the prediction game is difficult because the judge can do this. But, look at that discrepancy between what you've got what the prosecution wants, like 4 to 5 years, versus 2 or less from the defense. Where do you see this going?
Yeah, I think the prosecution is almost coming at this as if we're sore losers, and that's not necessarily the right term here, but they should not be asking for significant incarceration in prison on a case where whether or not you can ask for more because of what we just discussed, allowing this to come in, these other charges, related evidence. But he wasn't convicted of that. And how often, if ever, do you see people charged solely with the Mann Act? You had Elliot Spitzer, who wasn't charged, and he's accused of bringing women across state lines for sexual activity.
But that's the discretion, right? That's them's the brakes.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And someone should teach the Southern District that lesson, whether that comes from the judge or not. The jury certainly told them that.
I'm being facetious, obviously, but that's what prosecutors will talk about, their discretion to be able to charge if they think they can prove their case. But they've also got to continue all the way through sentencing and almost make their case yet again, Misty, to suggest why they think a particular sentence is appropriate.
Yeah.
What will it be?
We really got a forecast of that through these letters relating to the bail hearing. And we know that what prosecutors are recommending, they did basically a preliminary calculation of what they believe would be the minimum under the guideline, and they've indicated that they're actually going to seek something higher. I know this judge. I've had many cases before this judge, and I think he's going to be within the guidelines. I don't think you're going to see something upward on this particular
How about
case
a
with
downward
this
Right, I was
departure,
trying to say, what about
I-
downward?
Well, I think it's a possibility that you could see something closer to what the defense has set forth, which is like 2.5 years, and then you're going to get that time served. I do think that's a very reasonable outcome in this case. I don't think you're going to see something up towards that 10 or God forbid,
one thing,
the
Misty,
20.
but here's where I think the judge is going to hang his hat on to give him a little bit more time. One of the many factors on the 3553, which is the stupid law that you got to follow, but general deterrence. A judge, there's two types of deterrence.
Is that called like poster child?
Yeah, but it's allowed. It's in the statute. There's specific deterrence. So I have to give a sentence that's going to make sure Sean Combs isn't going to do this again. But I also have to give a sentence that tells the world, if you commit these types of crimes, this is the type of sentence you're going to get. And I represented Anthony Weiner, and that's the judge said, I don't think you're ever going to do this again. But I do think I need to send a message out there and sentenced him more harshly than if he was Anthony Jones and nobody knew about it.
And by the way, the prosecution talked about this in their letter into the court, the idea that he participated in these freak-offs and engaged in activity even while under investigation, showing a complete disregard for the law. While the judge buys that or not, really quickly, these are federal crimes. President Trump in his first term did posthumously pardon somebody for the Mann Act. Very different circumstances, a far greater racial component inserted in that particular one, which known as the White Slave Act at the time. A possibility here?
You got the big, beautiful bill. You got the big, beautiful pardon. It's certainly possible. I put nothing past Donald Trump. Maybe it's something for his agenda. I don't want to get too political. That's not what we're doing here. But it'd certainly be frightening. At the end of the day, whether I agree with it or not, there's a conviction. It should stand and let him do his time if that's what the judge requires.
Well, politics is happening on Capitol Hill. We're following that as well. Thank you so much, everyone. We've got much more ahead tonight, including